All right. Well, we talked rivalries a short time ago, and of course, when you think rivalries in high school football in the state of Ohio, Massilon and McKinley comes to your mind almost right away. It's the oldest rivalry in the state of Ohio, and it will renew itself this coming weekend. And visiting with us right now from ESPN 990 up in Massilon is Ray Jeske, who will be a part of the broadcast. Ray, how many years has it been for you calling a Massilon-McKinley game?
I've been in some capacity. This will be my 32nd year. And so given playoffs and everything too, about 36, 37 games, something like that. I've been doing the play-by-play for 16 years. And so I've either been on the field or up in the booth, one or the other.
Is there any way to tell someone who's never been to one of these games or doesn't know the intensity of the rivalry, Ray, how intense this rivalry really is between these two teams? I mean, goodness sakes, they've only been playing since 1894. As you would get your camera adjusted there. I know it's a rivalry really that's unlike any other in high school football in the state of Ohio, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what was interesting for me, Marty, is I came here in 91, and I was a graduate. I'm a Lakewood St. Edward alum, and you probably might not have known that. I thought we played big-time sports at St. Ed's. I thought so. I thought the Ed's-Ignatius game was kind of a Holy War rivalry thing. Previous to that, it was against Cleveland St. Joe's, was actually the original rival before the Ignatius-Ed's matchup renewed in 1971. It had been dormant for about 16 years. And we thought we played big-time sports. And then I got to Massilon, and I went, oh, my goodness, we were apathetic. We were apathetic compared to this. I went to my first Massilon Beat McKinley parade, which will happen Friday night. I went there with my wife and my then little kids and rode in some kind of a vehicle, a float or something, and 10,000 people lined the street on a Friday night, the night before the game. And I just couldn't believe it. It took my breath away. It was just crazy. You know, I thought, this is absurd. I cannot imagine this. And then the game that year was at the odd-numbered years are at Fawcett Stadium. I'll just take a moment to mention that Massilon beat McKinley 42-13 that game. I'll just mention that.
Yeah, just mention that, yeah.
Travis McGuire, 302 yards and 5 touchdowns. I'll just throw that in before he went to Ohio State to try to share some reps with Eddie George. But it just, once you go to this game, we were talking tonight, I was with a group of friends, and we were talking about the 100th game, 1994. And I'm down on the field. I was a field guy. I was our Marty Bannister in those days. And I'm down there with a microphone. And Bart Starr is doing the coin toss. And then a military flyover takes place.
Wow.
And then a 6-page spread in Sports Illustrated follows the event up. And of course, the game was 42-41, double overtime, with the Tigers winning it on some people allege a forward pitch. For the 2-point conversion to win the game, or the touchdown followed up by the extra point. And Josh McDaniels missing the extra point that would put it into a third overtime, with his father, Tom McDaniels, legendary coach, a dear friend of mine, kneeling and his arm around him, you know. But those kinds of memories, unless you see that for yourself and drink that in, you know, I've been in Fawcett Stadium when it was 25,000 people, wow, literally sold out. And then the rematch 3 weeks later, 35,000 are at the Rubber Bowl. And not everybody can get in who's trying to. Not everybody can get their car off the highway to get to the parking lot to get into the stadium.
Amazing.
It's until you experience it. And when the teams are good, that's when it really ratchets up.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that at all. The game, as I mentioned earlier, has it always been on Saturday afternoons, Ray? I would imagine at one point they did play on Friday nights, but has it always been on Saturday afternoons?
That's a great question, Marty. As far as I know, it goes back to, I think it just kind of Wrigley Field kind of predates lights. And so I think that somehow the time got locked in and became a tradition, but therefore it was Saturday afternoons. I've just seen old black and white newsreel photos of it at the same place that you've been to, that I've been there with you at Paul Brown Tiger Stadium. But it was just so wide open in those days. You know, it was just almost like a pasture, and just surrounded by people. So therefore, I'm sure it had to be Saturday afternoon, and I think it just got kind of the cement hardened that way. And so I think it's no more than that. I don't know that it was ever Friday nights. If it ever was, somebody would have to show that to me in print. I'm not aware it ever has been.
Oh, that's interesting because I just assumed that perhaps at one point they played on Fridays, but again, that's what kind of
Yeah.
sets it apart is playing it on Saturday afternoon. I think another thing that's interesting about it, Ray, and I don't know how many people really realize this, but these aren't conference rivals. Canton McKinley is
No.
in the Federal League. Massillon's an independent, and they've been an independent. You know certainly better than I do. I'm not sure how many. I guess maybe it's been forever. Have they ever been in
Yeah.
a league, Ray? Has Massillon ever joined
Yeah.
a league?
There was the All-American Conference, a six-team league that goes back probably 50 to 80 years ago, something like that. I'd have to look up the exact numbers when it stopped existing 40 or 50 years ago, and for how many years previous to that it ran. But it was great old school public school powers. It was Massillon and McKinley. It was Niles McKinley, Alliance, Warren Harding, Steubenville. And but Sandusky somehow got in there on a regular basis. I don't know if that was just a take on somebody else. I hope I didn't misspeak. If there are people from around here watching this that have a little gray hair, have any hair left, they will correct me vociferously if I just misstated something. But I think those were the teams, and they all were similar in the sense that they were like steel towns, blue collar, just tough towns with tough people. The Steel Valley, and its ilk. So it's a great heritage. And when I go back and I think of Earl Bruce coming here, maybe that's where I get Sandusky. He came here from Sandusky, and where he'd had a good run there. And then when he came to Massillon in 64, 65, he went 20-0, right to the Ohio State sidelines. And so he's forever beloved in Massillon because he never lost to McKinley and he never lost a game. But it was just towns and teams like that, big public school powers, the parochial schools were a thing of the future, but not of the present that inaugurated that league.
Ray, the thing about the game, and I think in some respects, I know you've heard this. Ohio State fans will say this. Well, I don't care if we lose every game as long as we beat Michigan. Is the mindset similar? I don't care if we lose every game as long as we beat McKinley, or as long as Massillon wins, or as long as McKinley beats Massillon. Is the mindset kind of the same that way?
Yeah, I think, Marty, and I imagine it's changing over time, but I'm quite sure that an awful lot of people in this town, in Tiger Town, would trade a win over McKinley. Then maybe their frustration over not having won in the playoff era a state championship finally has eclipsed it. But I think most people, most graduating seniors, and the ranking of the priority of it, beating McKinley is a bigger deal than winning the state title. If this could be that magical year that the Tigers could win both, or if any of the three of the previous 4 years when they made it to the finals could have been that year, that might be the feather in the cap. But that's how strong it has been. Therefore, McKinley, a 5-4 team, this matters because they can ruin Massillon's season in a certain way. I mean, they're both guaranteed playoff spots, but it would thrill the kids from McKinley. They're going to play their hearts out on Saturday, and they deserve to believe that they can beat Massillon. They're coming on like gangbusters.
Yeah.
But if they were to beat the Tigers, it would totally erase the 4 losses in their minds. That'd be gone. They'd be off and racing, off and running into the playoffs.
We have some notes up on the screen right now about the series. 132 games. Massillon's won 74 of them. There have been 5 ties. The points are somewhat about a 200-point differential between the two programs. Ray, does the intensity of this rivalry carry over to basketball, to baseball, to the other sports the two schools compete in?
It does, but football is sacrosanct. Football is so much bigger, but basketball is fierce. Anything, girls' sports is fierce, and kind of the cliche is if they played like tiddlywinks, it would matter. These two schools, there is I think part of it, Marty, is fueled by the folklore of the examples of people betting houses on this game, and surely that's going to spill over to everything else because you got to go double or nothing.
Wow.
We'll try to get you invested.
Exactly.
And so you hear all of these legends. I was just with a group of people earlier today, and a woman told me, a pastor's wife told me that she was in Germany in '58, and somebody was placing a bet on the Massilon McKinley game in Germany. I've heard the stories of Vegas. That's easy, not Germany. Come on.
Yeah, that's easy. Yeah, that's easy. You can place a bet on anything out in Vegas. Yeah, that's wild. Ray, as we wrap this up, I want to get your thoughts. The game itself now comes up on Saturday afternoon. Again, it's another, as you mentioned, McKinley has a great opportunity. They're 5-4. They're playing probably their best football of the season, and we all know how strong Massilon is coming into the game at 7-1. What are some of the things that folks should look for if they get a chance to see this or listen to you guys call on Saturday?
I think what Massilon will want to do is establish the run with a punishing running game like they did against Fitch. Their big win this year, the signature win, was the win over St. Ed's. Ed's came in 5-0, the defending D1 titleist, and the Tigers were able to pull that off. They had kind of a miracle fumble strip late in the game, the final 2 minutes, final minute and a half, and were able, their passing game was clicking that night in a special way. Their sophomore quarterback, Jalen Slaughter, their big wide receiver, Ardell Banks, torched St. Ed's that night, but a couple of little quick kids in Braylon Tolles and Kyler Wiggins, they're the story that because of their emergence, all of a sudden you got all kinds of weapons to deal with. Will Trell Hartson with 1,300 yards, 18 touchdowns, rushing the football, one of the best running backs in Ohio. And so, but Massilon, it was the next week, Marty, that Fitch came in here undefeated the next week, and with a very ballyhooed defense, and the Tigers just lit them up with a punishing running game. They went from a big passing game where they threw for 300 yards, 295 and 3 touchdowns, to a run game of over 400 yards. And it was just a punishing running game. If they can get the run game going like that, McKinley's going to have a struggle. McKinley, on the other hand, has got to be balanced. They can hit you with big plays, like is typical, has always been typical of their identity. Great athletes all over the field. Sincere McNeil, 6'4", 220-pound wide receiver. He's the real deal. That guy's significant. A sophomore running back that might become one of their all-time greats in a lineage of all-time greats, Nino Hill. He is going to be a force to be dealt with, too. Can the Tigers fence him in? It might be the Tigers' best front seven in my 30 years of being here, Marty. It's got to be close. There are 5 kids that are probably legitimate, at least MAC-level D1 kids. And between the front 5 or the front 3, really, they typically go with a 3-man front with a bear defense. But their linebackers are outstanding. Dorian Pringle is the real deal. Cody Fair is the real deal. Marcus Moore on the D-line is going to go to the University of Akron. He's the real deal. And if they can, that'll be the matchup problem there. You know, can McKinley affect enough offense successfully against that front 7? And can Massilon establish the run game? Because their athletes are not going to outrun them to the perimeter or in the deep threat. They're going to have to draw them in with a punishing run game first.
Should be a great game, as it seemingly always is when Massilon and McKinley get together. Ray Jeske will be on the call on Saturday afternoon on ESPN 990 up in Massilon. Ray, it's always good to see you, my friend. I appreciate you spending some time with us on what's a very busy week for you. Best of luck, and I know you'll enjoy yourself on Saturday.
Yeah, and there wasn't a joke about Todd anywhere, and I appreciate that.
Well, we're trying to make this a classy program, okay? We don't want to invoke things like that.
Let you clean that up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Marty. I'm privileged.
All right, Ray, take care.
I appreciate it.
Ray Jeske visiting with us here tonight. He's referring to a mutual friend of ours, Todd Bell, longtime broadcaster in our area, and does high school football as well, too. So, Massilon McKinley on Saturday afternoon. Should be a lot of fun.